Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump is putting the pressure on Iran during his Middle East trip. Speaking in Qatar last night, he warned Iran that time is running out to reach an agreement on its nuclear program.
A high-ranking Iranian official said his country is ready to make a deal. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
During Wednesday's state dinner in Qatar, Trump called on the emir to use his influence with Iran to help make a deal and warned time is running out for Iran to make a decision.
I mean, we have two courses. There's only two courses. There aren't three or four or five. There's two. There's a friendly and a non-friendly. And the non-friendly is a violent course, and I don't want that. I'll say it up front. I don't want that. But they have to get moving.
A recent report from NBC News says Iran is ready to make concessions in its nuclear program in exchange for lifting sanctions. The report quotes a top nuclear advisor to the Ayatollah as saying Iran would commit to not making nuclear weapons, disposing of its highly enriched uranium, and allow international inspectors to supervise its process of enriching uranium for civilian use. However, Iran's president publicly criticized President Trump's statements and says his country will not bow to any bully. Trump and Sheikh Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, signed both economic and defense agreements. Al Thani called Trump's visit historic.
I think after signing these documents, we are going to another level of relationship between Qatar and the United States. So I just wanted to thank you, Mr. President, again for this historic visit.
There are also concerns about the U.S. moving closer to a country known for supporting terror groups. In 2022, the Biden administration designated Qatar as a major non-NATO ally, a designation that carries military and economic privileges. Qatar also hosts CENTCOM, the largest U.S. base in the Middle East. But Yigal Karman, founder of Memory.org, says Qatar also hosted Hamas leaders for years, sponsors Islamist terror, and helped build up Hamas.
Qatar gave them billions of dollars over the years. They became a tiny empire, military empire. All the missiles to Tel Aviv, all the almost 40,000 weapon holders, killers, all the drones, all the motorcycles, what have you, all their equipment, everything, every single missile is Qatar. So Qatar is Hamas, Hamas is Qatar. They go together.
CBN's Raj Nair spoke with Middle East analyst Eric Stakelbeck about President Trump hoping Syria's new president will join the Abraham Accords.
Does he have nefarious intentions towards Israel, or could he truly join the Abraham Accords? In my experience, Raj, covering this for a long time, being on the ground in the region and even interviewing terrorists and former terrorists, the jihadi leopard usually doesn't change its spots. Let's hope that it's different in Syria. President Trump taking a big chance here, but he's doing it at the behest of those Gulf leaders, the Saudis, the Qataris, the UAE. They wanted Syria to join the community of nations.
Trump told reporters on Air Force One that despite the fact he's not traveling to Israel, he's not sidelining the Jewish state.
This is good for Israel. Having a relationship like I have with these countries, Middle Eastern countries, essentially all of them, I think it's very good for Israel.
President Trump ends his Middle East trip to the UAE today. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, time will tell if this has been a good trip for Israel or has it led to Israel being isolated. I agree with Eric Stakelbeck that the jihadi leopard doesn't really change its spots. And so when you are looking for somehow their ideology to change because you've gotten into a trade deal with them or you've offered them trading status that they didn't enjoy before, I'd be worried if you think that's going to change what they fundamentally believe. And the fundamental belief in the jihadi community is absolute. Israel has to be wiped off the map. And that is something they hold as an article of faith. This isn't something that is a diplomatic goal or a military goal. This is because they believe their religion demands it. That's why the attack on October 7th was called the Al-Aqsa Flood. What they were trying to do is get to the Temple Mount. That is That was the goal, and that has been the goal of ISIS. That's been the goal of the new leadership in Syria. Qatar is clearly funding that goal. So I hope we have our eyes open as to what we're dealing with, and unfortunately, the ideology hasn't changed. In other news, Vladimir Putin is a no-show at the Ukraine-Russian peace talks in Turkey. I think it's high time to believe that he has no interest in peace. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The Russian delegation in Turkey, as you mentioned, does not include President Putin, although Putin himself called for direct negotiations, prompting Ukraine's President Zelensky to challenge him to a face-to-face meeting. President Trump had pressed for the two sides to meet and even floated the idea of traveling to Turkey himself. He seemed to downplay the Russian president's absence, saying, quote, "I didn't think it was possible for Putin to go if I'm not there," end quote. Lower-level officials from the two countries are in Turkey, but it's unclear now if they will meet. Well, right back here in Washington, problems with the nation's air travel are under scrutiny in Congress. While Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is pushing for a major overhaul in air traffic control, some alarming incidents at one of America's busiest airports in New Jersey only highlights the need. CBN's Jenna Browder reports.
On Wednesday, the FAA met with 6 major airlines to discuss the ongoing delays at Newark Liberty International Airport. The FAA is proposing cutting flights to 68 per hour, down from more than 80. United has already agreed to cut 35 flights a day. It all comes after several snafus at Newark. 4 incidents in the last 2 weeks, including a radar outage just days ago that left air traffic controllers unable to communicate with planes for 90 seconds. FAA Deputy Chief Operating Officer Franklin McIntosh testifying on Capitol Hill.
When we lost that first line, the second line did not kick in like it was designed to do. That's what caused the disruption.
During those 90 seconds, was there a significantly heightened danger to the flying public?
I don't believe there was a heightened significant danger to the flying public.
McIntosh says they're now adding another line of backup at Newark.
We are working with a telco provider, along with Secretary Duffy's leadership, to actually bring in a third line of redundancy into that area to prevent this from happening again.
All of the chaos at Newark prompting delays and the cancellation of more than 1,000 flights.
We use radar from the 1970s.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and the Trump administration are making the case that America's air traffic control system needs an overhaul.
This technology is 50 years old that our controllers use to scan the skies and keep airplanes separated from one another.
The secretary made his pitch to Congress on Wednesday, asking lawmakers for billions of dollars to build a brand new state-of-the-art system. It would include new air traffic control centers, upgrades to telecommunications, and replacing hundreds of radars. They want the work done by 2028. Democrats criticizing the administration's prior staffing reductions and cuts to critical programs.
This plan seems to ignore the realities of the FAA, losing more than 2,000 employees this year, and assumes project timelines not yet defined by costs, access to materials, or feasibility.
And Secretary Duffy says they're also working on upgrades at Newark to help with the delays. He says they hope to make an announcement sometime within the next couple of weeks. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Jenna. Well, the Trump administration's refugee policies are creating controversy. It granted dozens of white South Africans refugee status. On the same day the Afrikaners landed, the administration announced it's ending protected status for thousands of Afghans, some of whom fought alongside the U.S. military during the war. CBN's Caitlin Burke has more.
The administration says white South Africans, especially farmers, are being discriminated against, denied job opportunities, and have been subject to violence because of their race.
It's a genocide that's taking place. White farmers are being brutally killed and their land is being confiscated.
Welcome to the United States of America.
On Monday, members of the Trump administration welcomed 49 Afrikaners to the U.S.
We're sending a clear message that the United States really rejects the egregious persecution of people on the basis of race in South Africa.
The South African government strongly disputes claims of discrimination and violence and says allegations of genocide have been widely discredited. Meanwhile, Trump's move has prompted the Episcopal Church to end a decades-long partnership with the U.S. government, helping resettle refugees. The church citing moral opposition to resettling the new arrivals in light of its commitment to racial justice and reconciliation and its ties to the church in South Africa.
It also saddens us to see that other refugees who are being denied entrance to the United States are people, brave people who've worked alongside of our military.
As the Trump administration launches this new South African refugee program, it's announced the end of protected status for thousands of Afghans in the U.S., saying the conditions in Afghanistan have improved enough for them to return home.
The situation in Afghanistan is completely unstable for a number of different populations that I think Christians care about, namely Christians, religious minorities, and women and girls.
Chelsea Sobolik with World Relief tells CBN News that for Christians especially, going back to Afghanistan would be a death sentence.
Afghanistan's currently under the Taliban rule, and Afghanistan has what's called apostasy laws. So it's illegal actually for someone to convert from being a Muslim to another religion. So we're continuing to urge the administration to offer protection for Afghan Christians who, again, would face violence or worse if they returned home to Afghanistan.
There are more than 14,000 Afghans currently in the U.S. under temporary protected status. According to the Department of Homeland Security, that designation will expire next week. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
All right, Caitlin. Gordon, back to you.
Well, I think it's clear that the Afghan refugees in North Carolina are Christians. They're part of a church in North Carolina. So to send them back to Afghanistan is absolutely a death sentence, and to claim that somehow or other Afghanistan has become enlightened and they have freedom of religion, well, that doesn't exist under Sharia law. Please encourage our administration, encourage the immigration to really have true understanding here of what it's like on the ground in Afghanistan. It's something that goes all the way back to the Bush administration and the constitutions that were established in Iraq and Afghanistan. And both those constitutions were based on Sharia law. And when you have that, well, there's no freedom of speech, there's no freedom of assembly, there's no freedom of religion. And what happens to women is absolutely horrific. So to send Afghani Christians back into that who've successfully gotten out of it and are established already in North Carolina, it really doesn't make any sense to me. So let your voice be heard, both to your representative in Congress, to your senator, and to the State Department. Let's turn this decision around.